All right. I have it live streaming in there. Robert, can you hear this? It's on out here. You can. Okay, good deal. Like a mic's probably gonna be overkill for this, but we're recording it, so now we'll have it on. That's true. The leaders don't scatter. All right. Well, I'm glad you're all here. We appreciate you coming to our training camp. And I knew, leaders don't scatter and they don't sit in the back, so I just stay right here with all of you. Good job. We've kind of leaned into this training camp motif, thinking about the hot August training camps of high school football that are happening. Let's see, Steph, are they happening this week, aren't they? Or is it next week? But actual camp is next week. Yeah, that's right. This is off week. That's right. I remember in high school being at camp, and our coach, he was a play like your hair's on fire kind of guy. And that's literally the quote he would always say. Like, my hair's on fire. We have a problem. Maybe that is what happened. I don't know. Yeah, self-depreciation. And he would say, like, where else in Iowa are people out in the heat practicing football? You think they're practicing up in Pella? They're probably sipping on iced tea over in Pella. You think in Sheraton they're working hard today? They're probably at the pool today. Which, there's no way that was happening. They're working hard just like we're working hard. The idea is let's get encouraged and ready to go for a great next season. And that's why we wanted to have this training camp as a way to let's start well in a new season. And being trained and being equipped is an important part of starting. And so we appreciate you being here. You are a leader. Whether you think you are, want to be one or not, you are a leader. And so that's why you're in this room right now. And so I hope you maybe got a handout. It kind of has an agenda. So if we stray from the agenda, just be like, come on, we got things to do. Get back on this agenda here. And so I'm supposed to be talking about the expectations of a leader. So we could quickly, we could quote from 1 Timothy 3, the qualifications of an overseer, a great passage. And I'm sure you've all read that before. And you can go home and you can read that tonight. So I'm not going to dwell on that this evening. You definitely should live up to that calling. But when I think about a leader, and when Lindsay and I have talked, as we recruit youth leaders and kids workers, a couple of the qualifications I always look for, kind of hard to define, is one, I always want someone that is dripping Jesus. Kind of seems like a weird way to say that. And now that hip new slang, drip, is like what you're wearing, right? So that still works, right? Jason, still works. If you're dripping Jesus, that means you're wearing Jesus, like on the outside, he's visible and seen. But it's obvious, it's evident, it's clear that this person has been with Jesus, and when their life is squeezed, what overflows and what comes out? Jesus. So that's kind of one of those things I look for, like who among us is just dripping Jesus, where it's obvious. And the other thing that I always look at when I want a leader, when I'm trying to find a leader, when I'm recruiting a leader, is someone that I can point to and say, if my teenagers or if my adults or the person in your Sunday school class, if they would become just like this leader, I'd be happy with that. And so I always think about that as a qualification. It's kind of like the Apostle Paul, says, follow me as I follow Christ. Right? Our leader should be someone that if they turned out just like you, they'd be in good shape with Jesus. And so we appreciate your willingness to be that kind of a leader. If you're in this room, either you're on the church board, you serve on one of our MAT teams, or you're a group leader, meaning you have followers as well. So being that kind of leader where people can look to and say, if I can emulate them, I'm in a good place. I want to look at this passage tonight, Acts 20 and 21. We're not going to read it even, but I just want to give you the summary. So the Apostle Paul has been spending some time at Ephesus, and he feels prompted pretty strongly that he is supposed to leave Ephesus, where he's having good ministry. He's supposed to go to Jerusalem, and that's not going to be as fun. That's going to be torture and abuse and imprisonment, and he's pretty clear of that. And the people are saying, don't go to Jerusalem. Don't go to Jerusalem. You know what's going to happen in Jerusalem. Don't go to Jerusalem. He says, I got to go. I have to go to Jerusalem. I know the Holy Spirit is leading me to Jerusalem. And there in chapter 21, there's this man named Agabus. And Agabus, what he does is he ties himself up. He lays himself on the ground and says, is this really what you want, Paul? This will be you if you go to Jerusalem. You're going to be bound and you're going to be chained and you're going to be imprisoned. You're going to be tortured. Is this really what you want? And Paul essentially says, it's not about what I want. It's about what God wants to do through me, through my obedience to him. And that's the kind of leader we're really looking for, right? is that it's not about me. It's about what God wants to do through me. I think about John 10, one of my favorite chapters, John 10. And in 11 through 13, it really talks about being an owner or being a hired hand. And so here's what it says in verse 11. It says, I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd lays his life down for his sheep. The hired hand is not the shepherd and does not own the sheep. So when he sees a wolf coming, he abandons the sheep and runs away. And the wolf attacks the flock and scatters it. The man runs away because he's a hired hand and he cares nothing for the sheep. So the question I want to ask, and really a challenge to give, is be an owner. Have ownership, right? We want our people to have ownership, not just to be a hired hand who, like, if something goes awry, say, hey, not my circus, not my monkeys. You will deal with it yourself. An owner says, let's make it work. Let's make it right. Let's do whatever we can. Let's do anything short of sin to make sure that the God is glorified and honored in our situation, in our ministry. So don't be a hired hand. Be an owner. Willing to give it all for your sheep because you have followers. Another point that I wrote down here was that people will follow you as far as you will go. We can't be leaders who just point the way and say, yeah, that's the path to take. We have to be willing and have already been. We can't take people farther than we've already gone. Spiritually, in maturity, we can't take people farther than we already are. So we have to be continually growing. We have to be a part of the process that we'll talk about. We have to make sure that we are serving and that we are connecting and that we are repeating ourselves. Leaders lead by example. Our people know, right? How far do you think we can fool somebody in our sphere, right? Our sheep, they know our lives. We're not real good at hiding things, right? Or faking things. It's pretty apparent. So be the person that leads by example. So the questions that we should ask ourselves: are you connected? Am I connected? Am I growing? Am I serving? Am I repeating myself through personal evangelism? Who am I mentoring? And if we got to make sure we can kind of check those things off the list, not for the sake of checking the box to say, oh, yeah, I'm doing those things, but because we believe that the process is important. And I'm just realizing I don't have anyone up there on the clicker, do I? You up there, Robert? Can you just jump on that clicker? I meant to bring the clicker down for me. I'm sorry. You've heard this process many times. You're going to continue to hear it because the more we repeat this process, the more people start understanding. And so we're going to have a new image. Okay, we've seen the circle and we've seen the straight, direct line, what this process looks like. Jason's smiling because he's seen this before. We've done this in youth for a long, long time. Because everyone understands the concept of baseball or softball, kickball, maybe if you don't play those other sports, same concept, right? And we're going to try to help our people run the bases to spiritual growth. Okay, we have to be always cognizant of our people taking the next step. That's the whole idea about the process. We don't want them to just stay in one place forever. They got to take the next step in the process. And so this first one is connect. After we're running to first base. These people, this is the first time we're connecting with them at all. We're even seeing them. Okay, so they come to church for one time. They're probably not connected yet. We hope they come back for another time. Hopefully they get connected. 2, 3, 4, 5 times, you've made it to first base and you're connected. You're a part of the body. We have to help them take the next step, which is to go to grow. We're running to second base. Okay, they're getting a part of a small group. They're getting part of a life group. They're getting part of a Sunday school class. They're getting part of a men's group on Wednesday night. They're getting part of refuge, or all the things. And as they grow and grow and grow, and they grow in their own spiritual disciplines, we hope we can plug them into serving. Okay, they start serving more and using their gifts. They understand how God has uniquely give them talents and abilities to use for His kingdom. And when they're so saturated with what God is doing in their life, it just becomes a natural overflow that they would repeat themselves. And they just can't help but to share what God is doing in their life. And so, the natural, here's the big overarching ministries that kind of meet these qualifications. And to connect, our Sunday morning service, that's our primary way to connect. Now, just like Just like we may have a clear process, it's not always a clear process for people, right? People aren't linear, right? And God doesn't work in a linear way all the time. Rarely does he, right? And so this is why maybe this is our process, but God can work however he wants to. So we hope that the church service is the first open door that they can connect with. It might not be. It might be in your small group. It might be through service. We've seen people come for the very first time through Helping Hands, right? And so it's not always going to be the first. But we think primarily people will come be a part of who we are through the Sunday morning service. Our culture, while it's continually shifting more and more secular, in our Midwest culture, church is still somewhat normal enough that people are willing to come in on a Sunday morning to service because they still understand that concept. So we still try to make Sunday morning our open door to any and everyone, okay? But we want to connect them. We can't just have them stay in the church service. Yeah, we're going to keep training camp. I'm just kidding. That gets glitchy. So we're going to use groups of all kinds, right? Where, hey, we know it's easy to get lost in a church with this many chairs, right? It's easy just to come in and go out and be hidden and never seen. And maybe you were greeted at the front door, but that's all the contact you want, right? But we hope that we can make enough connections and enough relationship that we can say, hey, why don't you come to our group? We meet on Sunday mornings at 9 o'clock. Or why don't you come to our men's group? We meet on Wednesday nights. Why don't you come to youth group? Why don't you, so you're trying to help them get into a group where they can find really deep connection. Of course, we want to make the first connection here in the large body, but helping them in a small connection is the way that we really help them to grow. Okay, it's a lot easier to have conversations about your life and about faith and about struggle and about things in a group of 10 people than it is in a group of 400 people. Okay, and so we want them to be part of a smaller group, whatever that may look like. And inside of those groups, I really feel like it is the best way to start serving. While there's lots and lots and lots of places to serve, we'd love to see the small group as really an avenue to connect and to grow and to serve together in this small body. And serving is about using your gifts. Oh, I gotta say this. I gotta back up to grow, because this is a line that I wrote down and don't want to forget, because it was really impactful to me when I read this. And it says, new Christians who immediately became active in a small group are 5 times more likely to remain in the church 5 years later than those who were active in worship services alone. That's a stat to hold on to. A brand new Christian is 5 times more likely to be here 5 years from now if they get and plugged into a small group right away. If we let them just sit in the service and they never get plugged in, 5 times, it says 5 times more likely they won't be here 5 years from now because they're not connected. They're not really connected in a small group. Okay, we get them plugged in, use their gifts, and I really like this definition of calling, where we want to help people find the right place to serve, and we may need to even help them discover what their spiritual gifts are. Okay, and we have tools and ways to help with that. And a lot of that is, some of us can you can just sense it in a person, right? Like, you clearly have a gift of hospitality. You clearly have a gift of teaching. You clearly have a gift to be with children or to hang out with 6th grade boys in life group. You clearly have that gifting, right, Jason? Right? Anyways. But calling is where your passion and your giftedness intersect. Something I really care about, and God has clearly gifted me in those areas. That's where you find your calling. This is what God has wanted me to do with what he has given me. And when you really find people that are in their calling, in their sweet spot, if you will, that you found their position on the football team, they really thrive in, you just see them, you see their ministry just blossom because they love what they do and they're good at what they do. But not everyone finds that right away. So I think we just need to encourage people to try new areas of service, new areas of ministry. Of course, there's lots and lots of areas of ministry inside the church walls, but we want service to be a lifestyle, not just fill our volunteer hole. We do want to fill our volunteer holes, but plenty of people serve in lots and lots of ways that isn't inside of the church. We want service to be a lifestyle, and we want our people to be known for serving. And then again, this repeat process. While of course we're saying to repeat this process in our own lives, we want to make sure we are always connecting in the church service and are always a part of our small group and always serving. For the people that we are leading, we want to make sure that they're repeating themselves. And that is personal evangelism, relational evangelism. If you were at our NDI convention a couple weeks ago, our speaker, Daryl Kripe, he kind of gave this whole talk about the one. Who is your one? Maybe it's your neighbor, literally, 20 feet living that way. That's your one that you're focused on sharing the gospel with. But it might not always start with a conversation about the gospel. It may be a conversation of, hey, I see you're putting your camper up. What are you all doing this weekend? And it just goes from there and it blossoms from there. Now, I'm not saying let's not have a sense of spiritual urgency to say, hey, if something happened tomorrow, is he going to make it or not? I'm saying your relationship ultimately always has more success than just cold, raw evangelism, okay? And so we want to talk to our people about what does that look like, but we have to model that. And I'm not going to, but I would love to say, hey, raise your hand if you have a one that you are intentionally, trying and seeking out and sharing the gospel with. And we probably would be ashamed to say, I'm not sure we have our hands up in this room or definitely in the whole congregation. So something we should be conscious about of who is my one that I'm intentionally trying to reach. Obviously, you're getting back to home base, and you're hoping that person that you've been sharing with is ready to start the process with you, and you run the bases with them, okay? So that's our understanding using the baseball analogy. I want to touch just a second on alignment. And this statement is from the book Simple Church, which our board went through a couple years ago, and it says, alignment is the arrangement of all ministries and staff around the same simple process. Alignment to the process means that all ministry departments submit and attach themselves to the same overarching process. Alignment ensures the entire church body is moving in the same direction and in the same manner. We've used this illustration before about rowing the boat in the same direction. A couple years ago at kids camp, we had 3 boys in the canoe. I tell you what, they were not rowing the boat in the same direction. You got the one in the back, he's like, come on, he's just powerhousing it, right? You got the one in the front who's like, who knows what he's doing. And you got the guy in the middle who doesn't have an oar, but he's like, what do we do? We got to go this way. What's happening? And they're just like spinning in the middle of the lake. Like, this is a good illustration, right? That'll preach, right? We got to be rowing in the same direction. That's why all of our ministries, whether you're teaching a Sunday school class or you're preaching on Sunday morning, we got to make sure that our people know, hey, we want to help people connect and grow and serve and then repeat it. Okay, we have to stay on that same mission so that we're not pulling apart. And here's another line from that book. It says, without the miracle of unity, okay, and it's kind of weird that they would use that phrase, the miracle of unity. But the longer you spend time in the church, you realize that kind of is a miracle, isn't it? You get a congregation with this many chairs to have unity. It's kind of a miracle. It says, without the miracle of unity, churches divide and ministry suffers, and all of this occurs while the world watches. So we want to make sure as leaders that we are unified in our vision and our mission and submitting to this process, which isn't our process. This isn't like we've come up with some, crazy idea. This is just God's process. It's all throughout Scripture of connecting, growing, serving, and repeating. So thank you for being here. Thank you for leading your groups. Let's have a word of prayer, and we'll jump into some practical things. Jesus, thank you for who you are. Yeah, we thank you for your process. It can look a lot of different ways with a lot of different key catchwords, God, but ultimately you are in the game of saving people, helping them become more and more like you. You have created us on purpose, with a purpose, and God, we don't want to miss it by doing our own thing. So Lord, would you just help us tonight as we get some practical training on what it looks like to be leaders and to lead others well in their pursuit of becoming more and more like you. We love you and we praise you. It's in your name we pray. Amen. I think I am turning it over to Stephanie, who's going to give us some practical tools as far as logistics goes with the facility, resources, calendar, etc. Give it up for Stephanie. She doesn't like that.
I don't. All right. So tonight I am going to kind of go over facilities and resources. So resources for you guys. The building is one of those. We want you to be able to use the building for your ministry. We want you to be able to have a place to connect, grow, serve, and repeat. And so that's very important to us. However, for that to be possible, there has to be some communication so that we know when you're going to be using the building. So one, we can have it ready for you so we can make sure it's clean. Rebecca has a big church to clean, so if she knows that you need a space and it's on our calendar, then she's like, oh, I need to make sure that this is ready for them. Also, if you don't want it to be hot or cold, we have to turn on the air or the heat depending on the season for that room that you're going to be in. You don't really want to sweat, and you don't want to freeze in the winter either. So that's another reason we like to know, hey, we'd like to be able to use the youth center for our small group. If you could just let us know in a timely manner, we can certainly put that on the calendar for you, and that way we know. Also, we don't want you to show up and there's already somebody else there. That has happened before. So we want to make sure that if you're needing a space, we can help you find the space that you need and make sure that it's set aside for your group. Yeah. And then also for those that don't have keys, making sure you can get into the building, and then that the building can be locked after you leave. That's also a very big key to it. You know, during office hours, we're here 9 to 4, so us staff are here. We're happy to help you with that. But if it's after that, we need to be able to make sure that you gain access to the room that you're needing, that the building is unlocked, and then that it's secured once you're done as well, so that we can keep our property safe. Yeah, and then also just another thing, for those that, for office hours, like if you come into the church building, it's a huge building and there are a lot of points of entry. If you could just like pop your head in the office and say, hey, I'm here and I'll be here for such a time. And the reason that is because when we leave for the night and we turn the building security on and you're in the building, you're going to send off the alarm and you're going to have cops showing up at your door and lots of people are going to get calls. And I've been in the building when an alarm has been set off and it's not quiet. It's very loud and very disruptive. So that's just, if you could just say, hey, I'm here. We're happy that you're here, but just let us know. That way you don't accidentally get locked in the building. For resources, we have several vans. I don't know, some people think, I don't know what you think about the vans, but they are there to use for your ministry. There is a process for that. You could contact the office and say, hey, my small group or my life group, we're wanting to do such and such. Is it available? And we can look at the calendar and be like, yeah, that's great. We can certainly help you out with that. We have a form for you to fill out. And then what you would do is you would like come to the office, get the keys, check the keys out, and then bring them back to the office and check them in, just so we know where it is, what's going on. But that is a resource that we would like you to be able to use if that would be helpful to your ministry. Yeah. And so a lot of that comes down to the calendar. So we have like a master church calendar. So I would probably be considered kind of the keeper of the calendar. So anything that goes on in the church ministry-wise is on our church calendar. So that's kind of like our hub of information of how we keep track of all of the different things that are going on within our church and within our community. So earlier, as I said, that's how I know if the space is available for you to use or not, because I will have, oh, wait, we have a rental this day, or, oh, sorry, there's another group that day, but can we look at another space or another day or another time? And that just will help you not be frustrated, because then you're not showing up and your space is being used and you were planning on that. And then we want you to be able to utilize the building, utilize the van, but for that to happen, we really need to just understand who's here, what's going on, and so that we can give you guys the best way to succeed in doing that. So that's kind of an overall view of how that's the process, and the why of why we ask for certain things is not because we're trying to keep tabs on everything. We're just trying to help you succeed and to make sure that things are available for your use as you need them for your ministries. I think Lindsay is up next.
All right. I'm going to give you some other practical training, and some of it may be relevant to your ministry and some of it might not be, but you never know what God might call you to in the future. It might become relevant, so don't take a nap yet. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is Planning Center. Planning Center is our church database. We primarily use people in the office. That's not, we don't use actual people. People is what the database is called. Anyways, so, but there are other aspects to Planning Center that we also utilize. One that might be super helpful to you is services. Services makes my world go round over in Kid City. So I spend a lot of time in this particular portion of Planning Center. And so I just want to tell you a little bit about what it does. So if you are a leader of a ministry where you have volunteers that serve with you, this could be super helpful to you. So Andy's going to be my mouse guy. So we'll see how this goes. We'll see if our communication's on point. So I'm going to have him go to Kid City. So when you come in, we have this, there's all these different areas of ministry. I'm going to use Kid City because I'm most familiar with it. And I use almost every portion of services, and so I can utilize that to show you what all it can do. And then if you, after this, are like, that would be really helpful to me, can you help me get this going for my ministry? We would love to help you with that. So go ahead to pre-K, Andrew. And we'll just go ahead and click on August 4. So this is this Sunday. So when my team, so Melanie is my pre-K director, so she primarily does the scheduling of the people, and then I go in and help make sure that they have all of the files and curriculum stuff that they need to get what they need to plan and prepare for their serving opportunity in pre-K. So as you can see off to the left, this is where she has her needed positions. And so she has a team of people that she plugs in to those positions. And the little email icon next to it implies that so many days before they're scheduled to serve, that's going to auto send a reminder to them so that they know, hey, remember you are scheduled in pre-K, and they hopefully show up. They can respond to that, and you can see when they have seen it as a ministry leader to know that a green check mark means my volunteer is going to be here. And we love green check marks over in Kid City. If it has a red line through it, it means that they have declined and you have a problem that you need to figure out. There. Rich. That means when you didn't say yes, no, I'm just kidding, then your leader doesn't know. I knew he was coming because Tiffany said yes and she would bring him with her. But sometimes if it's a question mark, then you're not sure if they've seen it or if they're coming. Some people you just know, they don't usually respond, but they always are there. And some people, if they don't respond, you might want to check on them. So it's helpful just kind of knowing that your team remembers where they're scheduled and will be there when they said that they would. Then over here you can see under order, one thing you can do if we plan every minute back in Kid City, as you can see. But even if you are in charge, I'm going to pick on Tim with the greeters for a minute, just as an example, okay? So if Tim wanted to, under order, he could create a Sunday morning template of what he expects as far as time. If you wanted your greeters to be here like 8:45 maybe, you could say 8:45 to 9:15, I expect you to be in your places, whatever. And then you could block a time that says, this is Sunday school, I don't necessarily expect you to be in the foyer. And then maybe you want them back out at 10 till 10 or whatever. And so you could kind of have that scheduled. And then if you want them to be back out there after service, you could kind of schedule that out so they know where they should be and when. And then over here, after you've got all of that in, you can save it as a template so you don't have to type it in every single time. That's also a good place where, like, Easter Sunday, you could write notes that say, hey, you're going to be greeting, but there's a photo booth this Sunday. So you may want to help direct traffic, and you may want to make sure people know that there are free donuts over here. You know, you could add extra notes to your team when there's something different so that they know what to expect. Okay. Yes, there's also notes. Extra donuts. Then over here, you can see where there's plan files. I usually use those for curriculum because my team are teaching. And we also have videos if they want to watch the Bible story video ahead of time, whatever. If you lead a ministry that could also use different documents that you've created or whatever. You may want to put files there for them. You can also link YouTube videos. Maybe you found a cool training video that you want to share with your team or whatever. You can do all of that right there in this section. So when they get the app, they can access any of this. Or when they get the reminder, they can see all of these things. And so when you train your team, you want to train them, hey, I'm going to use this and this and this. So check these things when you open up your reminder so that you can come prepared to serve. So that's Planning Center Services. If you have questions about it or would like to use that in your own ministry, if you're not currently, Michaela or myself would be happy to help you figure that out. Okay, I'm going to go on to what's called Church Center. If you're a grow group leader, this is going to be a little more relevant for you. If you are a grow group leader, hopefully you already have the Church Center app. If you don't have the Church Center app, we would love to help you get the Church Center app. This is what we primarily use for taking attendance. You also will get a reminder to take attendance through your email. That's perfectly acceptable as well. However, if you have access to a device that can use the app, it's way more user-friendly. I think it's easier to use. So when you go into the app, oh yes, that's what it looks like. It's like a little house. So when you go into the app, it'll show you where your groups are. So right there, groups. Any groups that you are responsible for or are a part of will come up underneath your groups. This is mine, and so I have some various groups. So we'll go to Kids Cindy Sunday School because much to Stephanie's dismay, I still haven't taken Sunday school for, attendance from Sunday, and I promise I'm going to do it tomorrow. Anyways, if you'll normally, if August 4, like if I actually take attendance on Sunday morning when I'm supposed to, it'll say take attendance now. It'll go live like right as your ministry session time starts. And then you can go in and you can click and take care of it. If you happen to forget like I did this week, you can, and you'll need to go to we couldn't find past events in the website. So you can use the website too. The app is easier. So in the app, it says see past events. If you look to the far left there, so you would click on see past events, and then you will see this screen here. And it tells me, oh, July 28, you did not take attendance. So I would hit take attendance, and then I'd come over here, and it has my whole list of kids. And I would go in and I'd check mark every kid that was there. Yeah, that's just the A's. No. Anyways, go to the next page. If I have a new child or a child that's visiting or a child maybe that has been attending second hour, but they randomly came to first hour for the first time, then I may go down to just visiting, and I would click however many kids that is. And then I would go up to notes, if you see up there, notes. And I would type in the names of those children and save that in notes. So Stephanie can count them, but she's not going to add them to my group yet because we want them to come a few times and make sure they're going to keep coming. Otherwise, your attendance page gets forever long. So then you hit submit, and Stephanie gets your attendance, and it goes into our giant groups database so that we know who all was there. So if you currently lead a grow group and you have not been using this, I'd love to help you with that because that's going to be super helpful to you. If you have never received an email or an app reminder or anything for a group that you lead, we may not know about your group. We've discovered in the past year that there are actually groups like happening that we didn't even know were happening. And so we would love to get you plugged in, and so we can help you in various ways. Okay. Oh, the other thing you can do through the Church Center app is you can email your group. You can access their contact info that we may have in our database. And so that's helpful to you as a leader if you want to reach out to somebody in your group and maybe you don't have their number. So yeah, if you click on their info there, if they're in our database, there you go. The other thing you can do is if you're a Sunday school teacher or grow group leader and you're like, I never remember to take attendance because I'm so focused on teaching, you can actually assign somebody in your group to take attendance for you. And you can even do that under their profile. It says permission to take attendance, and you click it, and then they can have the app, and they can go into the group, and they have permission to take attendance every week for you. So if you're like, this app thing freaks me out and I don't want to do it, find somebody in your group who loves stuff like this and see if they'd be willing to do it for you. I think that's it. I'll be back in a minute for something else, but I'm gonna pass it off to Michaela while we're still in the Church Center app.
Perfect. Okay, so I'm going to go over a couple of different practical tools. It starts in the Church Center app, though, so we're going to stay there for a second. Brand new today, thanks to Andy and Lindsay, we have what's called the Leader Hub on Church Center app. So when you download the app, you'll have options of me, home, groups, Leader Hub, and then the other one. If you click on Leader Hub, it's going to take you to two links. One is a communication request, and the other is Right Now Media. We may add more to this as we go in the future. We probably will. But this is just one way to get you the access to these different forms that you need or links that you might need for your small groups. So I wanted to go over the communication policy specifically tonight to kind of help make sure that we're all on the same page, right? When I was in Illinois post-college, the pastor I was serving under always called me the pastor of storytelling, which was really weird, okay? I don't recommend that title. But when we talk about communications and when we talk about marketing, we're telling the story of what we do and why we do it. And so this communications policy, just like Stephanie was talking about with the calendar and the building and the other resources that are available to you, this just helps us stay connected and on the same page. I think maybe there are communication policies that you've received tonight, so you can kind of follow along with me. I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but I did want to go through the chart on the front page with you. There's a priority 1, 2, 3, and 4 chart right there, and that's probably the part that's most important to pay attention to. So first, we want to help resource you and equip you in communications. Sometimes that can be the hardest part of ministry, is how to reach the people that we're trying to reach. And we want to help you do that, and I specifically want to help you do that. So we have created this chart to kind of give you some guidelines, give us some guidelines into how we're going to communicate different ministries, different events. So you can read through. The criteria column is how we decide what priority that communication request, that event, that ministry is going to fall into. So you could see priority 1 is church-wide events that provide outreach opportunities. So that's like the launch party. That is the Gateway United this summer. Those are things that anyone and everyone can and we hope will come to. So we're going to communicate that out as best as we can in every platform that we have. As you go down, we see that things get more specific and more pinpointed, if you will. So church-wide events, priority 2, that are for community building and discipleship. It might not be that someone that's just in the connect stage of the process is quite ready for that yet. We hope so, but they might not be. So it's very similar to priority 1, but we take out a couple of things like the promotional video. We're probably not going to do that for that request. But we still try to make sure that that event or that ministry is communicated well to everybody that might be looking for it. If you go down to priority 3, this is where we kind of see a shift in how we communicate. Key ministry events that affect only a specific ministry group. So this would be like if your ministry is wanting to have an event and you want it to be open to people to come, we have kind of a method of the staff will use to decide how we communicate that. It's always going to go in the newsletter, the weekly blast. We hope that we can put it in on an announcement slide if we have enough time to get it in on Sunday morning. And we may even choose to do a Facebook event, which I'm going to talk about in a second, that might be really helpful for all of you. And if it is, there's room for it, we'll put it in the bulletin as well. There are little asterisks by some of them because there may be weeks that there isn't room in the bulletin or we don't have time to get an announcement slide put together. And so we just put a little asterisk there to make that note. Priority 4 are community events that are in partnership with us, and you can see how we kind of decide to go through that part. It's not to limit communication for anybody. In fact, quite the opposite. We want to make sure that your ministry has the best communication out there so that people recognize us as credible, so that people recognize us as a unified body, and so that people recognize the branding that we have, which may sound millennial, Gen Z, and I am a millennial, okay? But it's super important when we have an organization, a church, a business, a group, if they're consistent with their branding, studies show that people actually trust us initially way faster. And so we want to do that as a church too. So on your Leader Hub, if you click communication request, Andy, thank you. Sorry. It will take you to this form. Lindsay is signed in, so that's why her name is at the top. It'll either ask you to sign in or you'll already be signed in, so your information will be there. And you're going to go through and just fill out what is applicable to you. If it has a red asterisk next to it, we really need you to put that in there. It won't actually let you submit the form without it. Yeah, so Andy wants to have a hot dog eating contest, okay? Not sure how we're going to promote that one. Oh, and he thinks it's a church-wide event, so, okay. So what's the purpose of your event, Andy? You're making this one hard, aren't you? Yeah, we may need to give you a call, Andy, and talk to you about this. Okay, so pause real quick. This one doesn't have an asterisk on it because sometimes you might not really have a target audience or an expected number, and we totally get that. But if you do, it just helps us to know a little bit more information. So if you don't have that, it's totally okay. But if you do, it just helps us know how to communicate it a little bit more. When are you wanting the event? That's super important for the calendar, right? It's also important for us to promote when it's going to be. You want it to be tonight. Good. Do you have a preferred space for your hot dog eating contest? I feel like you don't need a communications request for your own house. So when do you want us to start communicating this? Oh. See, this is a problem. I'm not a time traveler. All right, and do you have any specific details that you'd like included in the announcement? All right, so I'm going to pick on Andy since he set him up for that. Obviously, we can't time travel, right? So you've got to get your request in a timely manner. Usually, we're asking for like a couple weeks. We know it's not always possible. That's just preferred. I help with communications. Stephanie helps with communications. Lindsay and Andy and Darren, we all do it. And we're all trying to balance some different things. So having enough time to get you the best possible communication type resources is key. So Andy, I'm sorry, I cannot time travel. Also, a 12-minute video takes a really long time to make. And so that would maybe even require more than a couple weeks notice. We'd want to start planning that out even farther in advance. So you would submit this, it would go to me and Stephanie, and we would say, sorry, Andy, can't do that tonight. Oh, great. Okay, so that's the communications policy in a nutshell. If you have questions about it, I'd love to talk to you more. There's a lot of detail. Probably what the most important thing there is that priority box on the front page, because it's going to let you know what we're thinking when we in staff meeting talk about the request and how we're going to help you communicate your event. So the other thing in the Leader Hub is Right Now Media. Before you click on that, Andy, I want you to go to Facebook for a second. One of the things in the communications policy, as you saw, is that we can put events on social media. But we can only do that if you have a group set up on Facebook, right? And so one of the things that we're trying to do is get groups connected to our main page. So we actually have two. So kudos to Gateway Primetime and to Married Life, because you've already taken this step. But we want your ministry to have a Facebook group if you want it. And from there, we can put events on Facebook on your group specifically. This shows the world of social media, the community, that your group is a legit part of Gateway and not just some rando person out there thinking that they want to be, okay? So if you want one of these, we have to make it for you just with how Facebook is, so just come talk to us and we will make you one. We're also willing, if you want to click on one of them, it doesn't matter which one. If you scroll down a little bit, we're willing to add members for you. We can post announcements in, like we posted Revive to Married Life back in November, church-wide announcements, so we can help with that. And we can provide some backgrounds for you to use for your announcements if you'd like, just to help resource you with that. All right, now you can go back to the Leader Hub. Perfect. Right Now Media is the last thing I want to talk to you about tonight, and this is really for small group leaders, but anyone can use Right Now Media, so hopefully you find this helpful if you're not a group leader. You can click that link in the Leader Hub, and it'll take you to this page, and you can sign up for an account. If you already have one, you can sign in. Andy, I don't know if you were going to sign in, but let's pretend you did. When he signs in, he's going to be taken to a library of resources. And the way that it's been described is like a Netflix of Bible studies, okay? So you have all these options to choose from for your group. There are lots of videos, lots of study guides, leader resources. It is an incredible resource for you to use. We have selected authors that we trust, so anything that you use on Right Now Media is okay to use. While that spins, other curriculum outside of Right Now Media does need to be approved by the NDI Council or by the pastoral staff. Now, we do have a library of resources that you're welcome to look through and use, and that's already been approved. But if you have something new, we just ask that you bring it to us, the council or the staff, and we'll look through it and make sure that it follows our doctrine. Obviously, as a church in the Nazarene denomination, we look for some really key theological things to make sure it's following what we believe. And we just want to make sure before you start teaching it that it indeed follows our theology. So yeah, this is Right Now Media. It looks like a streaming platform because it is. Lots of things you could study. There's even a page somewhere in there where it says Pastor Andy's favorites and Pastor Lindsay's favorites, and we never got very far with that, but it's there, so you can even see what they are liking at the moment. You can search by author of the study, different libraries, different keywords. So there really is all sorts of resources on there, and it is for you to use anytime. You can use it for your personal devotions. You can use it for your group. You can use it for anything. There are a couple of parents that I know that use it as an entertainment platform for their kids because there are some shows on there for kids. So you can use it for anything. All right, with that, I think I am handing it back to Lindsay. So thanks, guys.
Okay. The last thing as far as communication that we're going to talk about, and this is for groups and for ministry leaders who may be either promoting an event or maybe you're trying to recruit volunteers, anything that you would want people to have access to as far as communication to your ministry, you would go through the communication policy, obviously, but one of our best and obviously most hidden resources in this building that we have discovered is the Connect Center. Nobody knows on the Connect team. It's a mystery. Nobody knows what it's for, and we're trying to help people understand. And so you, as ministry leaders, can really help us spread the word that the Connect Center is not just for new people in the Connect stage of the game. It is for everyone. No matter what step you are ready to take next, the Connect Center has what you need. Or it can. If we didn't get the information from you, it may not be there. I have a lovely group of people who work in the Connect Center, and we try really hard to tell them that anything that's in there is something that came through the blast or the bulletin. So if they read the blast and the bulletin, they know the information that they need to help you if you come to the Connect Center. If it did not go through the office and it's not in the blast and it's not in the bulletin and it just shows up there, they aren't going to be able to help anybody with it because they're not going to know what it is because we didn't tell them. And so if you can go through us for that, Michaela is fantastic about designing really pretty postcards and flyers and things that are really eye-catching. Sometimes I beg her to help me with Kid City stuff because I'm not very good at that. And I just think it's really helpful. She'd be happy to help you if you have something that you want to promote and you want it on a little card or something for people to grab out of the Connect Center. The other thing the Connect Center has is the kiosk. So that's another thing. If you have an event coming up that you need people to RSVP for, we can put a sign up on the kiosk for you that people can either go through the website, they can link it from the email blast, or they can go to the Connect Center and sign up right there. And it is super helpful to have that resource. But it wasn't very long ago that I had somebody ask me for their, like, who had RSVP'd, and I was like, I don't know what you're talking about, and I didn't realize that they had expected me to put it on the kiosk, and so I hadn't done that, and so their attendance wasn't very good. And so and that was partly on me, but partly also if you do that communication policy, then stuff like that doesn't usually happen. It's really helpful to us that we don't forget, because we kind of have a lot of irons in the fire, and we never intentionally forget anybody's thing, but sometimes it happens in the mix if we are just expected to know by reading whatever. Anyways, so the kiosk is really helpful. We want to help you get your information on there so that people will come to whatever it is. If you are a grow group leader and you know what you're studying, if you tell us in advance, we can get that in our grow group brochure. And then people, when they're looking for a class, our people in the Connect Center can be like, here's the things that are being offered right now. This is what they're studying. Does anything like that sound good? And then they can help get people connected to your group. So that is really helpful too. Our primary goal on the Connect team and in the Connect Center is to connect people to your ministry. If you have volunteer needs, we have a serve brochure too that we can make sure is available. If people are looking to serve, we can put them in touch with you if they're interested in your ministry. Sometimes that's a little depressing because people rarely pick Kid City and they want to work out other places. And so if nobody signs up, it's not because your ministry is not good, okay? But we are always putting the information out there, and eventually you might get somebody. So just know that our goal is to help you win, and we really want to be a great resource for you. I think from the platform, I'm not in here usually, but they try to point people to go check that out after service. So you help your people know. If you're a grow group leader, the other thing is that serve brochure has a list of great ways that your group can serve together also. So you can check that out also as a grow group leader. I think that's it. Yeah. It's the easiest way because you send it and it comes all to one place, and then we figure out where it needs to go from there. The question was, by the way, if you couldn't hear, is that where you submit, like, hey, my group is studying this and I want you to promote it? And yes, and it's a discipleship thing. And then she said there will be other things you can fill out. Yeah. You can put that in the notes. If you're like, hey, I need to know how many are coming to this. I need people to tell me an RSVP. Then that helps me know, hey, we need to sign up. And the other cool thing about the kiosk and signups is we can have them so that they directly, if somebody signs up for your thing, it sends you an email directly. So you can start compiling your list of people that have RSVP'd. If you want. Otherwise, we can print you a list later of people that signed up on your form, but it's kind of whatever you prefer. Is that it? I guess we didn't really have question and answer time in here, did we? Probably should have done that. Okay. That's it. It's you. I'm not good at transitions.
Good job, you all. Wasn't that informative and helpful? Hey, I want to read the scripture to you from Romans. And while I'm plugging that in, and I forgot my preaching glasses, so I might be up and down here. Romans 12:18. Staff has really done a lot in the last couple of weeks in my absence and even when I'm here. And I'm just so thankful for them and all that they do. Listen to this verse. If possible, don't you love that? If possible, as far as it depends on you, live peaceably with all. Think of that, if possible. And we all know that there are some folks that it's difficult to, if possible, with, right? Just to get along with. And so we all have challenging people that we deal with from time to time. And so we thought we'd just take a few moments and kind of unpack what that looks like, dealing with some. You know, just the grumpies. Sometimes we have just the grumpies. And I think a lot of times we just need to listen to them. At the same time, in a church this size, you all as leaders, we want you to have relationships with a lot of folks and connect with a lot of people on Sunday. And so sometimes when I'm listening to the grumpies, you know, and there are things that are legitimate that need to be shared and discussed, but sometimes timing is an issue. Sometimes I'll ask people, can you wait till I've, talked with people and it dies down and there's fewer in the building? We can really have a discussion about this, or set up, of course, a time for someone else. And I think that's very fair for you as well. I think there's situations where if you're like me on Sunday mornings, you want to connect with a lot of people because it's a wonderful time, to just make those connections, build relationship, see how people are doing. And if someone is talking to you, I think we'll use this as Bob. He's really skinny, and his upper torso resembles his arm a lot here. But I think just reaching over and grabbing their arm, and then redirecting. I mean, how many times am I at the door and someone is talking to me about something, and I realize it's going to take a while. I don't want to be rude to them, but at the same time, there's about 10 people I'm being rude to. Are you with me? We feel this, we sense this, and so, just a quick touch to the arm and then a quick connecting point here, and that lets them know, Bob, skinny Bob, that, I haven't forgot him. I'll be right back, but I just need a quick moment here, to shift and to talk to some folks. So that's just, I think, some things to help with us in some of these relationship challenges, because there's always some of that going on. But for pastoral staff, it's really important that we connect with a lot of people. I think with you as leaders, it's really important too. And that kind of brings us to this thought of, our people groups and the folks that we enjoy being around a lot of the time. I think they will wait. I think they understand that we've got responsibilities and things to do. And so, we just wait and talk together, or we get together on another occasion. Our small group folks, we kind of know that we probably won't do a lot of chatting on Sunday, but, when we gather, we're all gabby, right? Now, there's also the situation where we're in the small group setting, or even the Sunday school class, and Bob, he's just chatty. He's not going to be quiet today. So what are we going to do about that? Because, it's kind of more of a public group. I think we can do some things that are softer and say things like, well, let's hear from someone who hasn't spoken yet. Just something kind that way. There are times, too, that Bob doesn't get the message. He's not real adept with understanding these hints, subtle hints. And so we have to be more direct and say, let's talk about that later, or let's let someone else talk. So it's I'm speaking directly to Bob. Hey, let's wait and talk about that later. And that gets into the area, too, of, theology. If there's some things that are just kind of off and you're, as a leader, going, oh, wow, that's way out in left field. How do we deal with that? I think you can say, let's talk about that another time, and then have a discussion with them privately. If it gets so bad that someone just will not be quiet, and it's really affecting the group, because it does affect the group if someone talks so much that others won't, right? I think it's perfectly fine to have a conversation with them later. Say, Bob, we need to chat here, bud. Or even to talk with us as a staff and let us help you with that situation. I'm not aware of one of these getting that bad, thankfully. But if it does, we can help come alongside, okay? So just some things like that. But I really think you all are really an extension of the staff here in the church as primary leaders. And I think we have a responsibility to make a lot of connections when we're with God's people. So some of those little things I think can help. And we can always set an appointment. Hey, Bob, come and see me, tomorrow morning. Or can we talk after everyone leaves? Can you hang around? And if it's not important enough to him to hang around, it may not be that important, So I think that's very appropriate and very fitting in those situations. We're talking about kind of a succession update and kind of what's going on. So congratulations on your vote and where we're headed and what God is doing. Aren't you excited about Pastor Andy and what's going on in this season? I am.
Sure. Thank you for that awkward exchange. And we're hoping this next 18 months isn't an awkward exchange. We're hoping it's not going to be an awkward exchange. So we wanted to share with you. I mean, I hadn't really thought that we haven't really shared with the congregation. Yes, exactly. Haven't really told us what you decided, Andy. Yeah, so.
I wouldn't wear that. I'm sorry.
Yeah, but I almost didn't really think about it. It's just, we've had some camps and other things on our brains. But, so I'll just share with you first because, I think as leaders, if we're searching for that miracle of unity, it starts with all of us being on the same page. And so I think you can play a big role in this. So obviously, if you were there and you voted, you saw that vote. That Sunday, I spent a lot of time thinking about the 34 no's. Whew, the 34 no's. And I had to wrestle with that. That's a lot of no's. But the next day was my day off, a Sabbath day. I really spent a lot of time with the Lord that day, and he just really helped confirm some things in my heart. One of the things I think he did the way only he can do, not that I think he manipulated the vote by any means, I don't think that, but I had always told myself, I want 80%. 80% and I'll feel good. 80% I'll feel confident. Well, going back and doing my own math, that's one more vote. One more yes would have been 80. So I think God really kind of helped me say, hey, I'm not asking you to follow the opinion of the people. I'm asking you to follow my calling. And so, which I should have said, and we will say on Sunday, that we are ready to step into the next role. We're going to start this process. Whatever that looks like, we're already starting to look at staff and all of those things. But again, we just appreciate your prayer that we would find that miracle of unity in this. So I think we did not schedule this, but I think it's okay to say, do you have any questions about this plan, about this process, or maybe things that you are hearing that we can kind of help clarify, and you can then help clarify? Is there anything that we can help dispel a rumor, or maybe just an oversight or some piece of clarity for you? Okay. $15 There you go. Yes, I did do some in my mind. I was thinking, well, they weren't here. Yep, 15 years or older, yes. Yeah, sure. Yeah. She's saying, hey, I get it. Appreciate that. Yep.
Real quick. So that was a question that I had about voting and the age. That is set by the Church of the Nazarene, the manual. So it's 15 and older on any election that we have. That's the age. So, okay.
Yeah, so we just talked about that because you're having a membership class coming up. And so we're talking about while he was having a membership class that I would have a teen one, and Lindsay's going to have a kids membership class as well. Because while our denomination allows kids to just become members if their parents do, we obviously would love if they would hear about our denomination and our doctrine, our theology, because while they're only 8 now and their parents say, yeah, we want them to be members, they'll be 15 and voting at some point if they haven't gone through it. We want to make sure they are a part. So yes, we do not have them as often as we should, for teens at least. I know these guys have them more often, and we have had teens go through our adult class, but just this last one you had some teens go through. So
Start one last week of August, and Lindsay's going to coordinate. So we're doing 4 weeks, then the first 3 weeks of September through there. Yeah. So you'll be hearing that announced in the near future, that you'll probably hear believe, belong, that type of verbiage, but that's what that is. Okay, good question. Anybody else? Okay, thank you. So one of the things in this that I'll just add before we move on is, we've been down staff for a while, down a staff position, and we've been dragging our feet because we wanted to put some other things in place. This was a big piece of the puzzle, so as we begin to look for staff, we need to communicate where we are in the season with them. So we wanted to wait because we didn't feel it was fair to them with some uncertainty. So we felt like we had to get to this place before we moved on. We had some questions on why aren't we looking for staff, or what are we doing about that? And so we had to kind of just take some things in step there, in order. I want to give you just, I guess, a devotional thought from Matthew 11. And then we've got a little bit more tonight after that. Here's a thought about handling doubt and discouragement. Show me your hands if you've been involved in ministry with us in the past or currently. Yeah, that's why you're here, right? So we've been involved in that. Yeah, so each of us. And if we've been involved in that, we've all been tempted to become or maybe find ourselves in a place of discouragement. And this passage has always been one that's really interesting to me, because John the Baptist is at the end. I mean, he's in prison and he's experienced everything. He's been used of God in a mighty way, a powerful way, and he has prepared the way for Jesus. I mean, he has done an amazing job. And yet he's asking some questions at the end that are like, what in the world? Where did that come from? This is left field. It's like, you go ask him if he's really the Christ. He sends his disciples to do that. And we read this and we're like, man, what's going on here? What is in his heart and mind? What is he sensing? Well, he's discouraged. I mean, he's down. And I think it's easy for us, especially in this season that we find ourselves in. I think in an election year, I think in a year where a time when our nation just seems to be divided about so many things, I think it's easy to become discouraged and quickly. So here are some thoughts in this passage that I think are really helpful to us. So they went to Jesus and they asked this question, and then he responds in Matthew 11:4. Jesus says, "Go back and report to John what you hear and see. The blind receive sight, the lame walk, those who have leprosy are cured, the deaf hear, the dead are raised, and the good news is being preached to the poor." So he's basically pointing back to the prophets and saying, you know what all they said would happen? Check the box. It's happening. And so I think it's important for us to remember what God has done. To remember what God has done. He says, point John back, remind him what was prophesied, remind him what's taking place right now. The boxes are being checked, yes. Remember the voices after we entered into the 3-year agreement, when the General Church gave us the exemption. And when we entered into that, there were a lot of voices. There were a lot of opinions about all of that, by the way. Maybe you noticed or didn't. Maybe you had one. Maybe you held an opinion about whether or not we would make it, how much would come in, and was this a good idea? And so there were a lot of voices, and I was just praying that we would pay it off. And we mentioned in a meeting even last night, someone said that I had more faith than they did. Well, I thought I did at first, but it began to go downhill fast as we got closer to that deadline. But can I tell you, God did a miracle in that season. And I think that's something that we need to remember and we need to remind our kids about, we need to remind our grandkids. We need to say, we had this amount that was just astronomical. At some point, how do you keep measuring the amounts? But God did a miracle, and as of today, I understand, I think we're at 114,000. That's a praise be to God. And so when we're in this season, or maybe even tempted, maybe we're on the precipice and we're thinking, am I getting discouraged? I think we just need to remember what God has done, what he is doing. And then think about some of the faces maybe that come to mind when I make this statement. Those who have come to Christ recently. Think about those that were baptized. Just remember what God has done, what God is doing. In verse 6, Jesus just goes on. He's just flowing this. He says, check the box, remember what all has happened. And then he says, blessed is the one who does not fall away on account of me. And there's something in there that I think is a reminder for us just to keep going, keep hanging on. Keep doing what we're doing, because what you're doing is making a difference. You are making a difference. We don't have 12% growth in the church, in morning worship, and in discipleship ministries in the course of a year without you guys getting serious and getting busy. That's just all there is to it. God is using you, and I am incredibly grateful and blessed to be able to be a part of this and what God is doing here in this season. Don't give up. Keep on going. There's something else then a few verses later, and here's the big picture thought. We've got to remember what God has done and doing. We can't give up. And then we need to understand what Jesus thinks about you. So in verse 11, Jesus makes this comment. He says, I tell you the truth, among those born of women, there has not risen anyone greater than John the Baptist. That's a pretty big compliment, right? I mean, that's a big deal. And he makes this statement then right after it. In fact, this is the same verse. Not anyone greater than John the Baptist, yet he or she who is least in the kingdom of heaven is greater than he. What in the world is he saying? I want you just to think about this thought. What does Jesus think about you? I mean, he made that compliment to John the Baptist, and then in the very next breath, he may not have even breathed in the middle of that statement. He just says, yet. And we wonder, how does that happen? What is he even talking about? I mean, when we try to compare ourselves to John the Baptist, we're like, we're down here. We're like Skinny Bob. And then we recognize that we're post-Pentecost. I mean, the Holy Spirit lives and dwells within us. Think about that. What Jesus was saying is, hey, I think a lot about you all, and I'm giving you the power to do what I'm calling you to do. And so if we, I think, remember those things, if we hold on to those things, if we grab hold of that and just recognize that God is good, he is working in and through us. And then I think that gives us the confidence to dream big in ministry. I'm convinced that God has a next step for each of your ministries. I think that every one of us, myself included, there's something else. There's something next. There's maybe another step that he wants us to take. There's another people group he wants us to reach. There's some more relationships he wants us to develop. Maybe there's a ministry he wants to begin, and maybe you've just been thinking about, well, someone needs to do that. So what if we really begin to dream big and just let God do some things that only he can do? What if we let him do some bring the debt down miracle in our lives and in the lives of our ministries, and just see what God wants to do in the near future? I think he wants to do that. I think he wants us to be very creative. I know he doesn't want us to settle for what is just comfortable, right? I think he wants to stretch us. He's stretching me in this season, let me tell you. I think he's stretching Pastor Andy in this season. I think that's something he's calling all of us to do. What else? What is something else he is wanting us to do? And so would you pray that with me? And when we're tempted to be discouraged or maybe even doubt, is this really where I'm supposed to be? Is this really what God is up to? Like John the Baptist? Can you just let the Holy Spirit check the boxes? Look what God is doing. look what he's done through you, what he's doing through you, and be reminded he has greater things in store ahead. Can I pray for us? Father, I thank you so much for these men and women and even these young people here tonight and for their lives, for what they are allowing you to do in and through them. Personally, as you are just making us into the people you want us to be, I thank you that you have a call of holiness on our lives. And I thank you that you have also called us into ministry, that you want to partner with us. This is mind-boggling when we really think about this to its fullest end, that you want to partner with us and that you want to join with us and reach people for your kingdom, to advance your kingdom with us as a part of that. And so, God, we just say yes. We don't even know what all that looks like, but we say yes tonight. We say yes tomorrow. We say yes as you just lead us and guide us. And Lord, I just pray that you would help each of us. If there are some here that are discouraged tonight, would you just encourage them? Would you begin to play the reel, the film in their mind of what all you have done in and through them in the past? Just let them see picture after picture, frame after frame of the miracles that you have worked on their behalf. And maybe there's someone here that may be feeling like there's something else. What is it, God, that you have? Would your precious Spirit just begin to let their creative mind flow and run and fly? Holy Spirit, would you just have your way in our hearts and our minds, and would you help us to dream big for you, I pray. Lord, I thank you so much for this church. I thank you for the season that we're in. I thank you for the excitement that you have allowed us to have, the lives that we are witnessing being changed on a regular basis. We just rejoice. And I pray that you would just multiply that tenfold and beyond. I ask, and allow us to be used of you beyond our wildest expectations. We love you and we thank you. We pray this in your name. Amen. Well, we've got just a few minutes. Could we just kind of come up here and just talk about these things quickly, the remainder things? And we're just here. Was there something else that I'm missing before we head to the end? You want to explain that?
Okay, so the last little bit here, the rest of the month of August, well, the 7th, the 14th, and the 21st will be nights for leaders to train their teams. And so the last little bit here is going to be just a little bit of information that's going to help you with your training. So if you are not leading a training, you do not have to stay. If you want to, you are welcome to. You never know. You might learn something beneficial to you. But if you are leading a training, this will be hopefully helpful to you as you guide your team.
Yeah, why don't you two just come stretch?
2-minute stretch, Andy says.
Oh, we do love options. That's what we do best.
I thrive in off. For those of you who are leaving, thank you for coming.
I thought we were so short on time.
There's only going to be, probably be like 8 people maybe. We could talk a little more specifically with them.
Well, probably if you don't mind coming like maybe the first 3 rows, that would be easier since it's such a small group of you. I mean, I feel like these are just things they need to think about when they're planning, and if they want guidance on them, I don't necessarily think we need to. These are just tips for leading the training. I feel more than